We're working on my 1998 Jeep Wrangler TJ. It's a weekend wheeler and a daily driver, so I'm not going too extreme on any of this. But I went wheeling last weekend and I did one of these. And I got a great posing shot doing one of these. Well, the bad part is, I went into the trail with my steering wheel straight and I came out of the steering wheel 90 degrees off. So I bent some steering linkage. So today we're going to replace our steering linkage with this Rusty's off-road kit. This is a complete steering conversion kit and it's a direct bolt-on. No special tools required. So let's get started. This isn't going to be an unboxing video, but there's one of the things that I wanted to show you about this Rusty's off-road kit. Not only is it made in the USA, but they took a lot of pride in their product. Check this out. The way they shipped it, it looks like a can of Instafoam exploded inside there. They put this foam product inside to make sure that it doesn't roll around. That way you don't have to worry about the powder coating getting scratched or parts jumbling around or falling out. I've got products like these before where it's just saran wrapped together and they slap a UPS label on it. Not from Rusty's Off-Road. This is a well-packaged kit, so let's get it out and get started. Here are all the parts that come in the box. You have your tie rod link, which connects the two wheels together. You have your steering link, which connects the steering gearbox to the tie rod link. And then this is all your hardware for your steering strut and stabilizer. We're going to go through how to install all these parts and the step-by-step guide of how to remove your old product. One of the things that I wanted to point out about on these joints, these are all Moog TRW high-quality joints. These are replaceable and you can get these from your local parts store, so if you do need to service them, you can do that without having to buy the whole kit. And as you can see here, here's my steering link that goes all the way to the passenger wheel. Right there is where my bend is. Notice how it's right at where that squish down and that bolt is, the weakest link. So they have taken that whole weak link out with this steering conversion kit. Now I do have a lift that I can use, but I don't want to use it on this application. And the reason being is not too long ago I had an alignment done on this Jeep. The toe is set pretty close, so I want to keep it on the ground so I can reinstall the tie rod link without adjusting the toe. I'll go back and get an alignment later on. This process is actually pretty simple. It only takes a couple of tools. You're going to need a 19mm socket, a 19mm wrench, and a good old BFH. So everything on mine is a 19, so it's going to make it real simple. So I'm going to use my impact here. We're going to take the steering stabilizer off. We only need to take it off on one side. And the reason is because we can leave the other side on there because we're not going to disturb that. If you have to hit up on the thread part of the steering stabilizer, make sure you put your nut back on there. That way you're not bulking up the threads and it'll chase them back off whenever you take it off. My steering stabilizer is pretty corroded in there, so I'm going to use a punch or air hammer to knock it out the rest of the way. No problem. Now make sure you hold on to those washers because you're going to need to put those back on there after you get it all put back together. The next part I'm going to take off is the link at the steering box. All of these are going to have cotter pins holding them in. You can take the time to take those cotter pins out if you want to. Most of the time it's pretty easy to do. You just bend it over with your fingers and push them out. Sometimes if they've been in there for a while, it's just as easy to bend them up out of the way, put your wrench on there, and just twist it loose, and it'll break the cotter pin loose. So no big deal there. You can do it either way. If you have a ratcheting wrench, it makes this so much easier. Once you get the nut off, use your good old-fashioned BFH and pop it down. While we're already working on the driver's side, we're going to go ahead and take off the driver's side tie rod end. And it's the same idea, 19mm, and we're just going to go ahead and break that cotter pin loose without taking it out. And you guessed it, BFH. And over to the passenger side, lather, rinse, repeat. We're going to do it again. And there it is. Simple enough. Now, as you can see from here, it's a little bent. That's supposed to be a straight bar. So that's why this is going away. Okay, so back together we go. A couple of things I'll point out. The end with the hole in it goes on the passenger side. Also, we want to make sure that the tie rod ends are equally extended on both sides whenever we put it back together. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take the nuts off, and we are going to just check it and see how close the fit is. Okay, not too bad. So, one of the options on this kit is that you can get it so you can put it as an over-the-knuckle kit. So that would put the steering linkage on top. Now, one of the things you'll notice about that is that the taper doesn't fit. So you would actually have to ream those knuckles out and replace them with a sleeve. You can get those from Rusty's Off-Road also. When you do that, you're going to have some contact issues with your sway bar links and some other things that you would have to modify. So that is up to you if you want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stuck in there. So these ends are pretty close to being the same, and we're pretty close to fitting in directly. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one side in first. And then I'm going to travel to the other side to put that end in. And I will twist the bar evenly to be able to get them set together. So I got one end put in. Going to go ahead and pull this other end up and slide it in. Look at that. Perfect fit. Didn't even really have to adjust it. So since my tires never left the ground, I know that my toe was pretty close to what it was when I got my alignment done. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt it down and tighten it up right where it is. With a little bit of adjustment here, I can make sure that my end down here where the hole is facing vertical, so it'll come up and tie into my gearbox. So right now, I can go ahead and tighten these down because I don't have to worry about those being loose whenever I twist this, because we got lock nuts here. Also, these are tapered fittings. So, you don't have to go all He-Man on them. Just get them good and snug, and then twist them tight until the cotter pin will slide in. Okay, so we're getting ready to put the steering link on, and you'll notice that there's a round side and a flat side. So we want to make sure that the flat side is facing up. Now, when your alignment shop does the alignment, they'll have to think about that, whether they want to turn the whole thing or if they just need to take one tie rod end loose and do one spin on it. So if you're going to take it to the tie rod or the alignment shop right away, you might leave the cotter pins out just so they don't have to take them back out and put them back in. Okay, so we're ready to put the steering link in. And again, there's no right or wrong direction to put this piece in. You put it in either way. I'm going to go ahead and install it into my gearbox side first. And the reason I want to do that is then I can adjust it easily to put it into the tie rod link. We'll go ahead and stick it up here into the steering box first. Let that droop down. Now, as you saw earlier, my steering wheel is way off. What I want to do is I want to straighten my steering wheel and turn the key off so it locks it in position. That way I have a straight steering wheel whenever I put this link back on. Okay, so the steering wheel is locked in position. I just took the key out and that locks the steering wheel to a relatively close position. So now I can take my steering link end and I can run it over here to match it up with the hole. These come right out of the box. We're pretty even on the adjustment. So I'm just going to spin it evenly out. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to get our nut on. And I'm going to go back and check my steering wheel position to make sure that everything is straight. And then I can adjust it from there. So I need to adjust my steering wheel just a little bit. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. Your alignment shop is going to be able to get it perfect for you. So once you get it where you want it, go ahead and take your lock nuts or your jam nuts and run those down to get it perfectly set. So we got all our tie rods ran down, all the jam nuts are ran down, but we need to tighten those up. So to tighten those up, we're going to use 1 1/8 inch. Now we're on to the steering stabilizer. Now, the kit comes with a little hex head bolt in the package. Now, each application is going to be different. Mine just so happened to have, in an aftermarket setup, a 1/2 inch bolt with a sleeve. So now my regular bolt would be too long, so I had to get a new one. So in my particular application, I got a 1/2 inch bolt and locking nut that is 2.5 inches long. So we're going to use this to put the steering sleeve on. What we do, we got to figure out the best way to mount this. I am going to put this vertical to be able to mount that on there. We get our 2 U-bolts, we stick them through here. Use washer and lock nuts. And then do the same with the second U-bolt. This kit's pretty versatile, so you can do pretty much what you need to do depending on your setup, your aftermarket parts. All that can be done with this kit. Before I tie this down, I'm going to go ahead, take my new bolt, put my washer, my sleeve that goes through my bushing. Gonna go ahead and press those through and put it through my new mount. Now, remember that we had these thick washers on the back side of the original one. If we want to use those, we can. On this instance, I have plenty of bolts sticking out. So I'm going to go ahead and put one of those thick washers there and then put my nut on. I noticed that because I have that thick washer in there, that my nylock nut doesn't quite go all the way to the threads. Make sure that I have this pushed down all the way, because that's one of the concerns that I want to make sure I think about, is making sure that I have that all the way down to the nylock so it doesn't back off. And it looks like I got enough gap here on the top side that I can tighten all that down. So let's see what size that is. It looks like got the right ones here. And that nut and bolt seem to be exactly the right size. The nylock is right at the end. Now I want to go ahead and tighten these down. So I'm going to just snug down these lock nuts. Not all the way, because I need to make sure that I can run back and forth. So I'm just going to snug them down, that way it squares this up and keeps it just a little bit on the loose side. Now you can do this with a regular ratchet if you want to. I'm lazy, so I'm going to use an air ratchet. Now you want to make sure that these are even. Don't tighten one too much and then not have the other one tightened up. So make sure you're doing it evenly. What we want to do is we want to run the wheels all the way to one side and all the way to the other, and make sure that our steering shaft doesn't bottom out with where it's at. I'm going to tighten it up just enough to make sure it stays. And then we're going to run our wheels back and forth. So I ran back and forth both directions, and it feels like it's great. So now I want to go back underneath here, and I want to check to make sure that I have plenty of cushion and clearance between my shaft, which I do. I have about 1 inch between the bottom out on my shaft. No binding through here. I'm not binding on any bolts. I got all kinds of clearance all the way through. It looks like it's a job done. So there are some things to think about when doing this steering conversion project. It's very simple. It's easily done at home in your driveway with normal hand tools. Whenever you're putting everything together, make sure you line the holes up for the cotter pins so that way they're easy to insert and you don't have to work against the spindle or against the steering pitman arm. Also, make sure you torque everything. The proper torque specs are in the manual, so make sure you read through the instructions before installing anything. So torque everything down and make sure when you're done you grease it all. So happy wheeling. Thanks to Rusty's Off-Road. This is Project TJ.